I'm sorry if you hear any background noise. It is during the middle of the day. It is Saturday, and I'm also currently waiting for DDG to go live with his game show series. If any of y'all watch DDG. That's what's on the shirt. It says DDG. I do have some new charms. I think I'm gonna dedicate a full video to like resin charm sounds. But I got little pumpkins. Getting into the season. Kinda looks like a bell pepper. And they even got squash. I'm gonna dedicate a whole video to resin charms. I'm still collecting them, so it'll be a little minute. So where do we stop off? Chapter 4. We read Yours Tale. We are on chapter 5. My nose itches. In which Piglet meets a Humphlump. One day when Christopher Robin and Winnie the Pooh and Piglet were all talking together, Christopher Robin finished the mouthful he was eating and said carelessly, "I saw a Humphlump today, Piglet." "What was it doing?" asked Piglet. "Just jumping along," said Christopher Robin. "I don't think it saw me." "I saw one once," said Piglet. "At least I think I did," he said. "Only perhaps it wasn't so I did," said Pooh, wondering what Humphlump was like. "You don't often see them," said Christopher Robin carelessly. "Not now," said Piglet. "Not at this time of year," said Pooh. Then they all talked about something else until it was time for Pooh and Piglet to go home together. At first, as they stumped along the path which edged the 100-acre wood, they didn't say much to each other. But when they came to the stream and had helped each other across the stepping stones and were able to walk side by side again over the heather, they began to talk in a friendly way about this and that, and Piglet said, "If you see what I mean, Pooh." And Pooh said, "That's just what I think myself, Piglet." And Piglet said, "But on the other hand, Pooh, we must remember." And Pooh said, "Quite true, Piglet, although I had forgotten it for the moment." And then just as they came to the 6 pine trees, Pooh looked around to see that nobody else was listening and said in a very solemn voice, "Piglet, I have decided something." "What have you decided, Pooh?" "I have decided to get to Humphlump." Pooh kneaded his head several times as he said, Robin and Pooh Bear and Piglet. This and waited for Piglet to say how or Pooh, you couldn't, or something helpful of the sort, but Piglet said nothing. The fact was, Piglet was wishing that he had thought about it first. I shall do it, said Pooh, after waiting a little longer by means of trap, and it must be a coming trap, so you will have to help me, Piglet. Pooh, said Piglet, feeling quite happy again. Now I will. And then he said, how shall we do it? And Pooh said, that's just it. Now and then they sat down together to think it out. Pooh's first idea was that they should dig a very deep pit, and then the Humphalump would come along and fall into the pit. And why, said Piglet. Why, wait, said Pooh. Why would he fall in? Pooh rubbed his nose with his paw and said that little song, and looking up at the sky, wondering if it will rain, as so he wouldn't see the very deep pit until he was halfway down, when it would be too late. Piglet said that this is a very good trap, but supposing it were raining already? Pooh rubbed his nose again and said that he hadn't thought about it, and then he brightened up and he said that if it were raining already, the Humphalump would be looking at the sky, wondering it would be clear up, and so he wouldn't see the very deep pit until he was halfway down, when it would be too late. Let me just say to the pages we have in this chapter, I might have to make a part 2. Piglet said now that this point had been explained, he thought it was a coming trap. Pooh was very proud when he heard this, and he felt that the Humphalump was as good as caught already. But there was just one other thing which had to be thought about, and it was this: where should they dig the very deep pit? Piglet said that the best place would be somewhere where Humphalump was, just before he fell into it, only about a foot farther on. But then he would see us digging it, said Pooh. Not if we were looking at the sky. He would suspect that. He would suspect, said Pooh. If he happened to look down, he thought for a long time, and then added sadly, it isn't as easy as I thought. I suppose that's why Humphalumps hardly ever get caught. That must be it, said Piglet. They sighed to get up, and when they had taken a few coarse prickles out of themselves, they sat down again. And all the time Pooh was saying to himself, if only I could think of something, for he felt sure that a very clever brain could catch Humphalump, if only he knew the right way to go about it. Suppose he said to Piglet, you want to catch me? How would you do it? Well, said Piglet, I should do it like this. I should make a trap, and I should put a jar of honey in the trap, and you would smell it, and you would go after it in, and I would go in after it, said Pooh excitedly. Oh, very carefully so, as not to hurt myself, and I would get to the jar of honey, and I should round the edges first of all, pretending that there wasn't any more, and and then I should walk away and think about it a little, and then it should come back and start licking the middle of the jar, and then Yes, well, never mind about that. There you would be, and there I should catch you. Now, the first thing to think of is what to do. Umphalump's like, I should think of acorns, shouldn't you? Well, get a lot of. I say wake up, Pooh. Pooh, who had gone into a happy dream, woke up and started, said honey was a much more trappy thing than acorns. Piglet didn't think so, and they were just going to argue about it when Piglet remembered that if they put acorns in the trap, he would have to find acorns, but if they put honey, then Pooh would have to give some of his own honey. So he said, alright, honey then, just as Pooh remembered it too, and was going to say, alright, acorns. My nose is so itchy. Honey, said Piglet to himself in a thoughtful way, as it were now settled. I'll take the pit while you go and get the honey. Very well, said Pooh, and he stumped off. As soon as he got home, he went into the ladder, and he stood on a chair and took down a very large jar of honey from the top shelf. It had honey written on it, but just to make sure, he took off the paper cover and looked at it. It looked just like honey, but you never can tell, said Pooh. I remember my uncle just saying once that he had seen cheese just this color, so he put his tongue in it and took a large lick. Yes, he said, it is, no doubt about that, and honey. That's how I be looking when I be trying to get stuff out of the cabinet in the kitchen because I'm too damn short. Say right down to the bottom of the jar. Unless, of course, he says somebody put cheese in the bottom of the jar just for a joke. Perhaps I just had better go a little further, just in case Umphalumps don't like cheese, same as me. And he gave a deep sigh. I was right, it is honey right the way down. Having made certain of this, he took the jar back to Piglet, and Piglet looked up from the bottom of its very deep pit and said, got it. Pooh said, yes, but it isn't quite as full jar. And he threw it down to Piglet, and Piglet said, no, it isn't. Is that all you've got left? And Pooh said, yes, because it was. So Piglet put the jar at the bottom of the pit and climbed out, and they went off home together. Well, good night, Pooh, said Piglet, when he had got to Pooh's house, and we meet at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning by the pine trees and see how many Umphalumps we've got in our trap. 6 o'clock, Piglet. And have you got any string? No. Why do we want string? To lead them home with the I think Umphalumps come if you whistle. So some do and some don't. You never can tell with Umphalumps. Well, good night, good night. And off Piglet trotted to his house. Trespassers W. Pooh made his preparations for bed. Some hours later, just as the night was beginning to steal away, Pooh woke up suddenly with a sinking feeling. He had the sinking feeling before, and he knew what it meant. He was hungry, so he went on the ladder, and he stood on a chair and reached up to the top shelf and found nothing. That's funny, he thought. I know I had a jar of honey there, a full jar full of honey right up top, and it had honey written on it. You ate it, fool. So there I should know it was honey. That's very funny. And then he began to wander up and down, wondering where it was, and mumbling to himself like this. It's very, very funny, because I know I had some honey, because I had a label on it saying honey. pot to, and I don't know where it got to. No, I don't know where it's gone. Well, it's funny. You must be dreaming. He had murmured this to himself 3 times in a singing sort of way. When he suddenly he remembered he had to put the cunning drum in the envelope. Brother, said Pooh, it all comes of trying to find envelopes. And he got back into bed, but he couldn't sleep. The more he tried to sleep, the more he couldn't. He tried counting his sheep, which is sometimes a good way of getting to sleep. As that was no good, he tried counting envelopes. That was worse. Have y'all ever tried counting sheep when y'all couldn't sleep? I don't think I ever have. Envelope that he counted was making him straight for a pot of honey and eating it all. For some minutes he lay there miserably, but when the 587th envelope was licking its jar and saying itself very good on this, I don't know when I tasted better, Pooh could bear it no longer. He jumped out of bed and he ran out of the house and ran straight to the 6 pine trees. That's that fatback syndrome. The sun was still in bed, but there was a lightness in the sky over the underacre woods, which seemed to show it was waking up and would soon be kicking off the clothes. And the half-light of the pine trees looked cold and lonely and very deep. It seemed deeper than it was, and Pooh's jar of honey's at the bottom was mysterious. A sheep and no more. But as he got near to it, his nose told him that it was indeed honey, and his tongue came out and began to polish his lips, ready for it. Brother, said Pooh, as he got his nose inside the jar, a lump has been eating it, and then he thought a little and said, oh no, I forgot. Indeed, he had eaten most of it, but there was a little left very at the bottom, and pushed his hand right in and began to lick. By and by, Piglet woke up. As soon as he woke up to himself, oh, then he said bravely, yes, and then still bravely, quite so. But he didn't feel very brave for the word, which was really jiggeting about his brain, was envelopes. What was an envelope like? Was it fierce? Did it come when you whistled? And how did it come? Was it fond of pigs at all? If it was fond of pigs, did it make any difference what sort of pig? Supposing it was fierce with pigs, would it make a difference if the pig had a grandfather called Trespassers William? He didn't know the answer to any of his questions, and he was going to see his first envelope, and about an hour from now, of course, Pooh would be with him, and it was much more friendly with the two. But suppose envelopes are very fierce with pigs and bears, wouldn't it be better to pretend that he had a headache and couldn't go up to the 6 pine trees this morning? But then he supposed that it was a very fine day, and there was no envelope in the trap. Sorry. So they call elephants envelopes. Where would be in bed? The morning simply wasting his time for nothing. What should he do? And then he had a clever idea. He He will go up very quietly to the 6 pine trees now, peep very cautiously into the trap and see if there was an envelope there. And if there was, he would go back to bed, and if there wasn't, he wouldn't. So off he went, and at first he thought that there wouldn't be an envelope in the trap, and then he thought there would. As he got nearer, he was sure that there would be, because he could hear Evan plumping about it like anything. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear, said Piglet to himself, and he wanted to run away, but somehow, having got so near, he felt he must just see what an envelope was. So he crept to the side of the trap and looked in. And all the time, Winnie the Pooh had been trying to get the honey out of his head. The more he shook it, more tightly it stuck. Bother, he said inside the jar. Oh, help him mostly out. And he tried bumping it against things, but he couldn't see what he was bumping it against. It didn't help him, and he tried to climb out of the trap, but as he could see nothing but jar, as much of that he couldn't find his way. So at last he lifted up his head, jar and all, and made a loud roaring noise of sadness and despair. And it was that moment that Piglet looked down. Help, help, cried Piglet. Fluffalumps, umfalumps, or waffalumps. And he scampered off as hard as he could, still crying out, help, 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 heffalumps, huffalumps, umfalumps. And he didn't stop crying, scampering, until he got to Christopher Robin's house. Whatever's the matter, Piglet, said Christopher Robin, who was getting up. Heff, said Piglet, breathing so hard he could hardly speak. A heffalump. Where? Up there, said Piglet, waving his paw. What did it look like? Like. It had the biggest head you ever saw, Christopher Robin. A great enormous thing, like nothing. A huge big well, like I don't know. Like an enormous big nothing, like a jar. That's Piglet and that's Pooh. Fat self stuck with a jar on his head. Well, said Christopher Robin, putting on his shoes, I shall go and look at it. Come on. Piglet wasn't afraid if he had Christopher Robin with him, so off he went. I can hear it, can't you, said Piglet anxiously as they got near. I can hear something, said Christopher Robin. It was Pooh bumping his head against the tree root he had found. There, said Piglet, isn't it awful? And he held him tight in Christopher Robin's hand. Suddenly Christopher Robin began to laugh, and he laughed, and he laughed, and he laughed. And while he was still laughing, crash went the envelope's head against the tree rod, smashed with the jar, and out came Pooh again. Then Piglet saw what foolish Piglet he had been, and he was so ashamed of himself that he ran straight off home and went to bed with a headache. But Christopher Robin and Pooh went out to breakfast together. Oh, Bear, said Christopher Robin, how I do love you. So do I, said Pooh. And that is the end of chapter 5. We will start chapter 6 in 2 weeks. I hope you all enjoyed this story. Sorry for any background noise. And we're actually getting near the end of this story. So let me know if y'all have any books that y'all like me to read. If not, I will start reading my Christmas books again. We have a brand new Christmas book that I didn't even touch last year, so maybe we'll read that to get into the holiday spirit. I love you all so much. Take care, and I will see you next next time.